Welcome to the Dr. Nikki Starr Show, a podcast to support you in your spiritual awakening and personal development. As a spiritual teacher, healer, and intuitive coach, my intention is to empower you to live your ultimate potential and your ultimate life. As a former medical doctor and mystic, my role is to bridge the gap between science and spirituality to support you in understanding more of your multidimensional aspects. I share on a diverse range of topics, and it's all to support your greatest becoming. My mission is to continue reaching millions of people for the healing and awakening of humankind for the creation of the new earth. Thank you for being here.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Today, we're back with Vicky, one of the co-founders of DNApal, and I just recently got my results, and I felt like there was so much information that I wanted to have a part 2 that was really tangible for you to see what the results are like when you do the genetic testing. And just, I'm so mind blown, but also I feel validated. Like I kind of knew some of what was shown in my DNA. And so thank you, Vicky, for being back with us and also for sharing all your wisdom, which you're going to share more today.
Hi.
And so when the results came back, so if you didn't see the episode, actually, I can't remember which episode it was, but if you go back in the last few months, you'll see there was a episode about DNA testing and looking at your genetics as a way for prevention and how you can really optimize your health, your well-being, even your body weight, etc. Basically everything you can look at in different sectors of life, because all you do is order the DNApal test. It comes in the mail and it's like a swab. And I actually did it on the video version of the last episode. And you basically swab your mouth and it gets sent in for genetic testing. And also I want to remind everyone what's great about DNApal is they don't sell your DNA. Your name doesn't even go to the lab. So there's really this confidentiality with your DNA, and then it's destroyed afterwards. So you can really feel safe about getting your genetic markers tested to see which supplements are the best for you, but also where you need to be mindful and make certain types of dietary changes. And in the bonus section of this episode, we are going to be giving some prescriptions of things you can do if you already know that you are predisposed to certain things we're going to be talking about, including PMS, bloating, stress, sleep, and what are some of the other main categories that I might be?
Vitamins, increased need of things like omega-3, B12, you covered sleep and stress, fitness, estrogen pathways, detox pathways for hormones and other free radicals and toxins that you might be inhaling or consuming, just pesticides. Our food's so toxic now with pesticides, how your body deals with all of that, and can it eradicate it, or do you need to give it some bit more support to clean your body more, or we're living in this toxic soup right now, aren't we? So even when we live the cleanest lives, we actually have to work a little bit harder than perhaps our ancestors did, because there's a lot more chemicals in our environment than there's ever been.
Absolutely. And, you're now getting into the topic of, even before we get into this, there's the idea of nature and nurture. And we learned about this in medical school as well, that your genes are your nature. It's what you're predisposed to. But your nurture, which is the environment you find yourself in, can turn things into disease or not. And like you said, he talked about like the loaded gun, if you want to give your example.
So your genes are like the loaded gun, and it's your decisions and environment and supplement choices and dietary choices that will pull the trigger. So if you do all the wrong things, then the genes are going to express, and they might be genes that you don't want to express. And I use in epigenetics, I think a really simple way to understand epigenetics is like a light switch. If the gene is too fast, we slow it down. If the gene is too slow, we speed it up. Or a light switch, if we don't want one to express, we can turn it off or turn it on if we need it on. So that's what I just find fascinating, and especially through evolution, where our bodies develop new genes to be able to deal with environmental changes that we're experiencing. And to me, that's just absolutely fascinating, and makes me think the human body is even more fascinating than it already is, because it's so clever.
It really is. And also just how powerful we are to create our reality. So basically what we're saying is you can get this test and it will show you which genes, like in mine, if you're looking at the video version, it's like which genes are coming out in red, where it's like you have to supplement or make dietary changes in some way. And then there's other ones that are like the green light, which is everything's going well, right? And essentially it's our choices, our decision are creating our reality, are creating disease or not, are creating health or not. And what better way than, especially if you're challenged by certain things, and I'm going to get personal in this episode and use myself as a case study, where there are certain things I've noticed about my way of being, despite I live a pretty healthy life relative to probably the general population. And even still, even if I decide to cheat a little and have some gluten or whatever, I notice a shift in my belly and in even how I feel. And so that's one of the things that we talked about today. When we went through my results, I was sharing how one of the things I notice is I wake up and I have a flat stomach. And by the end of the day, I have quite a little belly and it's inflammation. And what we were able to find is I have immediate chance for celiac disease. So I am sensitive to gluten. And if I eat it enough, I will get it. I could potentially get it. And I am absolutely lactose intolerant. Like my genes show that I cannot digest it. So no matter how much I think like, oh, well, if I haven't had it now, I can have it then. It's like, I actually don't make any lactase at all, right?
No, you don't make the lactase enzyme.
And it's fascinating, right? Because it's so good to know this information, because I have been cheating with the gelato. I was in Italy. I was having gelato. Even here, it's still summer in Ibiza, even though it's going to be October. And I like to cheat. I like to have some gelato sometimes, even though I usually never do. But now I know, you know what? I'm going to get the vegan flavors now.
Yeah.
Why?
Or a really good frozen banana.
Yeah,
That's what we do at our house. Yeah, we do at our home a frozen banana with strawberries or chocolate, or depending on what the children want. So it's great. Really easy.
And you really can make different textures of things, like blend them, freeze them, and then you have that. So there's so many wonderful alternatives, but at least I now definitely know from my genes, and not, because what happens is you can sometimes become gluten intolerant or lactose intolerant if you have inflammation in your gut. Yeah. And then you think, well, I've been good for a long time, so now my body can handle it. That can be true. But now I know for a fact, like I don't make lactase. So why put myself through the gas and the bloating and being uncomfortable and then making others uncomfortable if they're around? So it's good to know these things. And so some of the other things that we touched upon, I actually feel I know we were talking about diet, but what I feel most fascinated by is the PMS stuff, like looking at estrogen for women and testosterone for men. So with women, we see it in the form of like PMS, like you get bitchy, impatient before your cycle. And for men, it's more like aggressive behavior.
Yeah, it could be aggression, or if their testosterone is dropping, low sex drive, don't get up and go, things like that. But with men's, especially in the male health report, it's more about, does your testosterone convert to the more dangerous form of testosterone, which is called DHT. And that will drive up kind of the prostate risk of prostate enlargement, and then, you know, eventually, not always, but in some cases, then turning into a prostate cancer situation. Again, if you know that your body likes to convert those hormones into the more dangerous forms, there is so much we can do before to prevent that happening. And then you don't have to have the hassle of later life hospital visits, this treatment, that treatment, and so on, because prevention is always going to be easier than cure.
Yeah. And also, which is so also similar for the women also produce a toxic estrogen. And so I came out as positive, as very much producing the toxic estrogen. And so what is this toxic? Like, how is it different from the other estrogens?
So they're just one's just more of a gentler form of estrogen. That's a 2-OH. So you if your body favors that type of estrogen, your PMS won't be so hard. You know, some people just don't have any period trouble. All of it gets converted from the androgen hormones anyway, so testosterone. I think that may be in your extras or something. We could put the hormone chart in that shows you how all the conversions work, and then you'll see things with 2-OH, 4-OH, and 16-OH. E1, E2, E3 is also called. And 4-OH is the more dangerous type of estrogen. So that's like an estrogen pathway of how we
The 3 different types.
Yes. And the 16-OH is the one that's in between the 2-OH and the 4-OH. So that one's not as dangerous. But if your body prefers to make the more 16-OH, the 4-OH, then you're going to it makes more free oxidative stress, free radicals. It makes quinones, which can be dangerous to the body. And then if your estrogen metabolism pathways, like your COMT gene, you might have heard a lot of that. COMT gene's flying around a lot at the moment on the internet, COMT. And that's also an estrogen detoxification pathway. So that could be a perfect cup in the storm if you don't do the right things to then have more estrogen-driven disease or symptoms. You know, it could be fibroids, could be cysts. Doesn't necessarily always have to be cancers and things, but generally when somebody ends up in an uncomfortable situation with the potential of an operation being offered, you know, some of that 4-OH estrogen can be the thing that's driving it. Not in every case, because again, we're all unique, but you know, that's kind of where we're looking at with the risk factors to prevent you even having to go there.
Yeah. And so it's good to know, like, even now that I have the validation, first of all, what it has offered me is to have so much compassion for myself, because it's a genetic thing. So I even know, like, the women in my family as well suffer from pretty bad PMS syndrome. And there's even like PMDD, which is mood disorder, which is like even worse. And I really believe we have that. And I could see where even in relationship, like, that's often a time where there's more disagreements and challenges and maybe even like threats for breaking up. And so by knowing this, I now know, which we're going to share in the bonus section, which supplements to take, what food to eat to help my body metabolize out this version of estrogen, that not only for the mood and all the drama and chaos that it can create in our lives and just make us feel like bitchy and angry, because you mentioned anger, rage can come from this. And I definitely, even more recently, is this something that can also get worse with age? Because I've noticed I feel more rage now at this point in my life, and I never felt it when I was younger.
Yeah, in Chinese medicine, so any rage and anger is the symptoms of the liver. When we're trying to balance hormones, the liver plays a crucial part in balancing the hormones. If the liver's congested, say it's dealing with your alcohol, because you need that glass. I know you don't drink, but you know, in a sort of a Western household, a glass of wine is quite normal. To come home from work, have a glass of wine. Well, that's going to push your hormones to the back of the queue. It's not going to balance them. It's going to go, I've got to deal with this alcohol first. That I need an hour just to metabolize 1 unit, and that is a tiny 125 ml of wine. It's not very big. And think at home when you're free pouring your wine into a big glass. So the hormones get backed up, and the liver gets more and more congested. The more that the liver gets congested and the hormones are going through, the more the irritation, the rage, if you crunch that peanut one more time, I'm going to punch you type vibes come in. I think we've all been there. But it's a real thing. And again, a few years ago, if somebody crunched a peanut with me at any time in my cycle, I would be fine. But now, if it's a couple of days before my period and I hear that crunch, I'm like, I have to literally deep breathe in the kitchen, because I know it's my hormones, I know it's my liver, because my liver detox pathways aren't so great. And I have tendencies for estrogen dominance from genetic, which all ties into the migraines that I've suffered since I was 14. And it's just totally empowered me, because I can now navigate life a bit better. And I do a hell of a lot of liver work. I'm always working on my liver pathways.
And even in the results, I'm going to pull up the results. There's different results that you're given for both the estrogen, and then when it's the liver, and then when it's the receptors. So also my receptors, one of them likes to hang on tight. So I have like a triple threat. Sorry to all of the past boyfriends. But it's like a triple threat, not a triple threat, but it's like triple horribleness that is like the triple whammy to add to mood and impatience and all of these things, where I don't even drink alcohol and I still suffer. So I can only imagine women who similarly have this, or even men that have the reverse for men. Imagine what if you were mindful of the things that clogged your liver, and you did take the supplements that helps with liver metabolism. Knowing this could be so transformational for relationships, for practicality, for even productiveness, or even interrelational dynamics. Like maybe you've suffered in the workplace because you've had a hard time at work with, your boss telling you to do things and this and that, or even as an entrepreneur, just feeling inspired at that time. And this is also why tracking your cycles, it's not really related to this episode, but I just see where this ties in, because then you know when to start taking your supplements. Because, I know we're going to get into the details of the supplements in the bonus episode, but would people have to take supplements all the time? Or you do it only around the time where certain things would be active, or if you notice symptoms?
I think you've got 3 different life stages here, possibly 4. You've got fertility. So depending on what your hormone genetics report back, that's your goal, to have a baby. We've got fertility, and we've got perimenopause. Then we've got menopause, when we've absolutely, haven't had a period for 365 days. Then we're into post-meno. And actually, there are all different requirements for those different stages. So, for example, you wouldn't use foods, perhaps, or supplements that make you more estrogen dominant in a perimenopause situation. You would use those post-menopause. But for somebody who's already got an estrogen imbalance of a likelihood of being more estrogen dominance or estrogen imbalance, they might do better post-menopause, because the estrogen is hanging around longer.
So it depends on your goal, is what I'm hearing. Yeah. Like if your goal is for pregnancy, you're going to do certain things.
And your life stage, I think. Goal and life stage. Because your post-meno life stage, when your periods have finally stopped, your needs are quite different at that stage.
Okay, fascinating. So that's why it's so important to, I feel like I wish I had known more for the interrelational dynamics and the mood. But I would say, I feel like really just in the last 5 years, I feel like I've noticed the moods the most, even though the cramps and the clotting was always there. And I know that you were saying that cramps and clotting is connected to this form of estrogen as well.
Yes.
And then that connects to the liver. So I feel like super excited to go to the store and get all the things and start.
And then let them crunch those peanuts or crunchy things.
And and that's the other thing too. This is something that's been coming up even for a lot of my clients lately: stress and overwhelm. and really feeling like sometimes we think our emotions are really just because of our environment, but not necessarily true. And I didn't realize that. Like, I have the genes where I don't process my cortisol well, which is a stress hormone. And there was another one, I can't remember.
Yeah, there was a cortisone as well.
And
when we looked
cortisone.
at that, and the cortisone, which is also regulates your blood sugar. So, you know, when people say that they've started to put weight on around their middle waist, that can be a blood sugar cortisone imbalance as well as a cortisol balance as well. So they're slightly two different hormones. But yes, and the COMT as well, which I mentioned for the estrogen metabolism, is also responsible for detoxifying adrenaline and dopamine. And again, the more those neurotransmitters hang around, the more chance you've got of mood disorders, insomnia, disturbed sleep, things like that. So there's a lot of things. There always, whenever I do the consults, there's always quite a few light bulb moments for people. And like you said, sometimes it just validates what you already knew, but then you know you're on the right path for the things that you're doing.
Yeah.
And some people haven't worked it out yet, and then they've got the answers. Now I know what I'm going to do. And then we always get these wonderful reports saying, thank you, I feel better. Which, how wonderful is that?
Yeah.
You know?
Like for me, I always thought like, well, it's just meditation. But now that I know that there's a genetic factor, like I'm going to take the supplements and make the dietary changes, because how much better, like even though I still love to meditate, but I just know that I'm even more supported. And for sleep, even though I have a full green light, my sleep is great. But I've had so many clients who've shared they have trouble sleeping, and they try melatonin, and they try changing their caffeine time, etc. But if any of these and you find out, like, you can support yourself. So I think really if there's any area of life where you feel imbalanced or challenged, you can receive more answers with this, with also the practical how to in terms of foods and supplements. And in the bonus, we're going to give some generic ones for certain symptoms that you might be suffering. But it's good to just know, because you also don't want to take supplements that you don't need and make dietary changes that maybe that's not the answer for you, because you only have so much energy and time, and even times that we eat throughout the day. Like, one of the things is I don't have, what is it? I eat a lot. Like, as everyone knows, if you know me, I eat a lot, but then I'm so grateful I don't have what's the gene that
the fat gene.
I don't have the fat gene. So thankfully,
so you have the leptin, your leptin receptor is a little bit delayed. So what happens is, from the tummy to the brain, it's a little bit slow to say that she's full up. So that can cause you to overeat or pick or not quite satisfied. It's a little bit deaf going up there to tell you that you're satisfied. But then if you combine that with the fat gene, which you don't have, it's easier to maintain weight. But also, you know, now that you know it's genetic, you have to do a little bit of mindset work. Know that what's on your plate is enough for you as a portion. And, you know, I'm not into counting calories, but, you know, calorie wise, if you are into counting calories, because if you're eating the right foods anyway for you, you shouldn't need to count the calories.
Exactly. And I feel like for some, I've had clients who struggles with weight. And so similarly, if you know that any of these genetic markers are here, you can make the changes. And yeah, sometimes it can be energetic, and I very much work on the energetic plane. And even still, we can do energy work on our genes. Like, this is part of epigenetics as well. But just by knowing it, then you can also factor that into whatever treatments you're doing. So yeah, I'm definitely a big fan. Is there anything else you want to add to the results? Like, when people get the results?
Just for some of the guidance of testing. So as much as what comes out of the lab is 99.9% accurate, is what the lab claims, the research is coming out so fast now. It's still a newly developing science that is only going to keep growing and growing and growing. So it's a really interesting space to be in. But I like to do testing on top. So, for example, with the B12 and the intrinsic factor that I mentioned, and Nikki was like, well, should I just go and get injections or put patches on or something?
Yeah, because I don't absorb it well in my gut.
with the intrinsic factor that's
Right.
a bit deaf, a bit sluggish. So I prefer people to experiment with themselves, because then you really truly get to know yourself. So it's perhaps get a blood test, look at your B12, supplement. If it's low, then obviously supplement. If it's fine, leave it. It's just something to keep an eye on. Same with some of the other genes, like the ACE gene, which regulates the electrolytes and blood pressure balancing. I don't say to people, right, go to the doctors, go and start taking blood pressure medications or anything like that. I just say, keep an eye on it. Use electrolytes, keep the kidneys working properly, support that area that needs to be balanced. For example, a good example for me is my skin receptors don't absorb vitamin D from the sun very well. And that's been a game changer for me, especially through winter, fighting off all the horrid viruses and bugs that have been, around at Christmas time. And I do go and get tested in September after a summer of sun, and I'm always deficient. And then I supplement all through winter and I get my levels up a little bit, but I'm still not optimal. Still got a way to go to optimal. So that's where I find it really interesting, is how much harder do I have to work to get my levels optimal? And then you start going into the biohacking space. But we want to optimize our health, right? We all want longevity, and we all don't want to spend our last, years in and out of hospital if we can avoid it.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Yeah, totally. And I totally agree. And one of the things I love is when you get your results, it comes in like these really cool PDFs. If you're looking at the video version, I'm sharing what the PDF looks like with the all the results. And so it tells you, and then it gives you recommendations, but then there's also an app. So the app is really cool because I still have to log in, and you have to answer a bunch of questions, and then you put in your ID number for your test, and then it pulls in your results into the app too. So you're getting like double support in terms of what supplements to take, in terms of what dietary changes to make. So you're really supported. So the test not only gives you the results, because I was talking with a client this week and she had gotten some DNA testing, et cetera, but then she got the information, but then she didn't really get the next part, which is then how to implement it in her life. And so DNApal really supports you in that as well.
And we see that a lot in the groups, that people go off, buy these random tests, haven't done their research to see it, or they're targeted on social media, and then there's no what now. There's no hand holding. So the reason for the app was we appreciated that not everyone can afford a consult, number one. Or two, we're looking at 80 to 140 different insights on your body. That's a lot to take in. And generally, most people walk away from a consultation and remember 5 things. They'll go, oh, B12, vitamin D, maybe my hormones. It's a lot to take in. And we do record the consults because you've got that for life and your genes don't change. But there's no hand holding. So the app is more about the hand holding and the daily things. So, because who can afford to go and see a consultant every week? I mean, maybe you can, but we want to help everybody in all parts of society, not just the people that can afford a consult every week. So the app, it's free to download, it's free to use, and like you said, gives you the hand holding. What do I actually do now? Advice. Also, it takes 23andMe and Ancestry, so if you have already done that, you can start using the app again, because we try to be appreciative of that people might not have constant budgets to have to go and buy this test, that test. So again, to try and really genuinely help people with the advice, because it is life-changing, gives more longevity to what they might already have paid for and done, that you can use in the app and have some hand-holding.
So you can add your information if you did the 23andMe into the app?
Yeah, and Ancestry as well into the app. And you won't get everything unlocked because it takes time to do these research and make sure it's 100% evidence-based and the studies and things. So we have to,
give a disclaimer.
Yeah. Generally, if you have already, you can start using the app. But it is better to do. We capture over 800,000 SNPs. A lot of those other panels that DNA companies do are much, much smaller.
Mhm.
And the reason of the 800,000 is so we can keep adding to the research as it comes out. Because we're only going to find out more and more. We've already collected it, so then you don't need to keep going and retesting, putting your DNA into labs, and all of that. So we've tried to make the whole process for as easy as possible, as cost effective as possible, but also safety wise as possible, and ethically, because we just wanted to create a safe space for people.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for this information. And I do, having just gotten my results, I highly recommend that you go and get yourself tested and you analyze your DNA so you can see what genetic markers are predisposing you or protecting you against certain things. Like I know that I found out that I'm less likely to get a tumor. And so that feels really good of like, oh, but then of course I'm still going to stay healthy and do the right things, right? And so it also gives you positive information. You're going to find out information that's going to make you feel really good. Like, yeah, I know that I sleep well. Great, And if you check in the comment section, there is a coupon code as well for you to get 10 pounds off. And is it Nikki 10 or something like that?
I think it's Nikki Starr 10.
Or Dr. Nikki Starr. Yeah, you can just check in the comment section.
I think it is Dr. Nikki Starr 10.
Dr. Nikki Starr 10. And yeah, let us know if you have any questions. You can comment in the comment section or reach out to us individually on Instagram as well. And so with that, we'll see you inside the bonus content where we'll be giving actual prescriptions and things you can do with supplements and diet for different symptoms that you might be experiencing that are tested inside of the DNApal as well. So thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dr. Nikki Starr Show. Please like this podcast and share it with anyone you feel would benefit. Subscribe to the podcast to receive bonus content, and remember, every Monday the video version goes live on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being on the Ascension path with me and for doing this great work.